everybody, how are you doing today? And welcome back. I am now going to keep my other promise and do the report on the police officer that I believe should have never been fired. And he is a true American who has fought for his country and who believes in his constitutional rights and believes in ours and our rights, and that they should not be violated. So I totally agree with Greg Anderson and his speech that he gave to try to unite the people and get police officers to act as they should to try to build a bridge back between us, the citizens, and police officers. And for that, he was fired. Now, for you guys who have seen this story, great, then you knew what I was talking about in my other videos. If you haven't yet, I'm going to give you a little bit of information on it, and then you can go ahead and look the rest up yourself. But this is basically to show you the difference between good cops and bad, and what we have more of today, and why we don't have good ones anymore, or very few, but not ones that will stand up to the corruption either, because they are too scared of either having to resign or quit, or lose their insurance or pensions. To me, that's not right or enough to not stand up to do what you were truly hired to do. As Greg Anderson stood up for what he believed in and did the right thing and refused to go against his beliefs. As if we had more officers like him, then they could get the bad ones out and stand together as good officers. But you've allowed the opposite to be done, and that is wrong. Okay, enough with my beginning rant. Let me jump into this before I lose my light, because we all know how that goes with my eyes, and then I start stuttering, and I hate that. Okay, we actually need more police officers like this one, which is Greg Anderson. But as I have said before, this is what happens to police officers like this one. The good ones, they get fired or forced to resign, etc. If they speak out or speak up in any way, so most good ones learn to keep their mouths shut or leave the job. This is where the police started going downhill. Good ones are to keep to themselves, knowing the corruption is going on, leave, or pay the price in some way. The bad ones know the bad ones know they are going to get away with it. And it's okay, basically. That they are covered all the way to the top. And if anyone, I'm sorry, let me hold one paper at a time, it's bleeding through. Where's my spot now? Sorry, guys. Okay. That they are covered all the way to the top. And if anything happens and they are sued, it's okay too, because we, the taxpayers, pick up that bill, not them. Which again, I will say, that needs to be changed now. They need to be held accountable and pay themselves for their own bad behaviors and wrongdoings. Those are their bills, not ours to pay. Next, after the video on this good cop that was fired, I am going to play a video of two bad cops that they continue to be employed, even after attacking an innocent, to me, kid. He's a 21-year-old, but a lot of 21-year-olds that are, you know, hanging out with their family aren't really going to do anything wrong, and a lot of them are very immature for their age. So I wouldn't say he's a grown man or an adult. By the eyes of the law, he is, because he's above 18, but he's still a child. And I don't believe he's out there doing anything corrupt in front of his parents, especially to what they're suggesting. Okay, 21-year-old on a walk with his parents, and the cops explaining doesn't make any sense. Plus, breaking the rules and the policy, since the two bad cops were dating and working together. Which, you don't make the correct judgments when you're trying to impress or support your partner that you're intimate with. As for the actual attack on, I'm going to say, the kid, the male officer says there was a report of sounds of gunfire, or he thought he heard gunfire. I wasn't clear with that. He seen this boy who was walking with his parents and threw something, which he didn't throw it because he seen the cop. The cop seen him throw something at the wall of a warehouse. I just didn't know how that was going to sound when I read it. So he's walking with his parents, maybe picked something up, or maybe had something in his hand and kind of tossed it towards the wall of a warehouse, and somehow that has to do something with sounds of gunfire. So they stopped and questioned them, and in the midst of questioning, they just started arresting this kid. And you'll see in the video how that plays out. I'm sorry for that little delay. Holding the papers together, it was bleeding through, and I could see the other marks behind the letters, which was making it blurry for me. And then I have my little side notes, too. I don't know if you can see this. Probably not. It probably just looks like a big white blur. Oh, there you go. So when I'm reading that, tiny inserts I put in, it kind of stumps me, too, sometimes, because I have to write it so much smaller. Okay, so that is why they stopped him and all this BS happened. Does that make any sense to you? It doesn't to me. Okay, so just so you can get the whole picture real quick, I would like to also say all this kid did was ask his dad to take his phone, and he gets his neck ripped up and choked. Does that make any sense? Then his dad says to his mom, basically, turn around, don't watch this, because, you know, she's seeing her son being treated in this horrible way. And then he, don't look, and I told you people, and then he said to his family, I told you these people are dangerous, which is true. And they proved it right then and there. We were just out for a walk, for God's sakes. So these people go for a walk. They are flagged down by the police, questioned. As they start handcuffing this kid, he says, Dad, hey, can you take my phone? And the dad, before he could answer, the cop grabs him like this and slams him to the ground, and his partner is dragging him by one of his arms while the male is on top of him saying, don't resist, and beating him down more. It was a total you-know-what show, and for no reason. So you're going to see it, like I said, in the video, but to me, I want to break it down and explain to you what most of us saw who've seen this a while back. And not too long ago. It's a couple months ago. But I'm just saying that have already seen it. Okay. No reason to suspect this young man who was walking with his family of anything that... I'm sorry. No reason to suspect that this young man who was walking with his family of anything. What does supposedly throwing something towards the wall of a building have to do with anything? The way this cop, acted and how they handled the situation, they both should have been fired immediately, especially since on top of all the other issues, the chokehold was banned from police use a while before this happened. And this cop used it again. If you want to look more into this one, the officer's name is Brandon Reynolds. And the point of me bringing this case up is to show you who they get rid of and what type of officers they decide to keep. Now back to the good officer, Greg Anderson. They really had nothing on him to fire him, but they kept looking for a reason. So they came up with he was in uniform and in his patrol car and on the clock, which I've never seen confirmed, but this is what was said, when he made this video. Really? Well, to me, reading out to bridge the gap between police and citizens is part of his job. So he was doing his job. And working for the citizens, so he was still not doing anything wrong. He was still doing his job. He was trying to do something to bridge the gap between us and the police and make a plea to his fellow officers to act right and do right and honor their oath. That is part of his job. So how they could say he did this, and he was at work, so that makes it a conflict, is BS. Again, because here's number 2. But it's okay when other officers are on the clock or in or next to their patrol cars and in uniform when they're doing all these other bad things and violating citizens' rights, etc., or dancing on YouTube videos, slow down, videos, Facebook videos, or any other video, etc. That's all okay, but for good officers doing his job and the right thing gets fired. You know how many videos I've watched on many of media platforms of not just one cop, but groups of cops in uniform, on the clock, next to their car, getting out of their car, dancing on videos to kind of inappropriate music for an on-duty police officer. But that's okay. Breaking the law and violating people's rights on the clock is okay. And that's what stumped me. My mind was just going a million miles a minute just now, trying to think of all the things that I know cops do on the job. In fact, right over here, they come and hang out for hours. Some go in the back and take naps while they're on the clock and on duty. Okay? So, again, what are you doing? You're getting rid of good police officers that want to do what the law requires them to do and honor their oath and not violate us and treat us as they should. And those are the officers you decide to get rid of. But then ones like you're going to see in these videos, because I added another one, that follow they are still on payroll. Okay, and I don't want to jump ahead of myself, so I'm going to go ahead and read this, and then we're going to get into the rest. And here my light goes, so forgive me. Okay. While doing the research on this story, I found more to add from the same area. All these from the same area. So as they like to say, there is sometimes one bad egg that slips through. I call BS with this research. And then I wrote a little side thing, so give me a second. And a lot of other research done on the same types of cases. And it gets worse. And it also tells you in the end of the video exactly what I was going to say and talk about anyways in this video. And it's how even if a cop gets fired or resigns, which is forced to resign, their careers do not end there as it should. They will still get another position down the road or in the next county or area or wherever they decide to go, and they will get the job with no check or care of their history. So they don't check their backgrounds, which you'll see in the last video. They don't do background checks and history checks on how these officers behaved in the past and why they're not still with other areas or agencies. They just hire them. And I don't think they ask because they cover up for one another. And even if they did ask, they're going to, oh, he was a good officer. There's the code of silence. They don't tell on one another. They're not going to rat each other out. Oh, yeah, he had to leave here because, you know, he was caught doing this, or there were so many complaints made that he has to leave our department, but he can still work in your department or agency, sorry. It's not okay. If an officer is removed from a job because he's done something wrong, he should not be able to be hired again as an officer. Period. Okay, let me get this finish reading this before my light is completely gone. Okay, because they don't really take reports or ask for them either on cops or their bad behavior or misbehavior or misconduct or care or even care. They cover up for one another. Police code of silence. We just have them, we just hand them over to another area. And you see how small that was written. That was horrible to try to read with my eyes. Okay, there is absolutely no background checks into prior work history, performance, wrongdoings, bad behaviors, etc. Absolutely nothing is looked at. There is more of a work history or background check history on a busboy, grocery bagger, etc. Than there is on police. And they get guns and badges and handle citizens in every way, private and personal, and most of all, physical. Doesn't there seem to you to be a lot wrong with that? Then you see someone like Officer Anderson fired for doing all the right things and a clean police record for 10 years. There is your sign. There is too much wrong here. A lot of changes need to be made. None of these government people are going to do it because they are all a part of it. Which again, for that part, you can go see my other videos. And then as far as this background stuff with the police, that was in my prior video too, with the lawyer asking the higher ups about things like that. Why these officers' reports are written as they have done nothing wrong when they do things wrong, and that gives the wrong perspective on the police person of being either a very good worker or a medium graded worker or a failing officer. We can't establish that when the reports are either non-existent or they're based on kind of a buddy code. So again, even with that, it's not even checked into. Say I work for one area and I'm forced to resign because somebody's coming after me for something I did wrong. I can just resign. That way they don't have to really put it on my record except that I resigned to leave. And then I go to the next county over and I get a job over there. And they don't ask any questions because they're brothers in blue, the thin blue line gang. So what do you think about I have so many questions. My mind's just like boom, 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 boom. What do you think about all this? It's like, we all know that it goes on. We all know what's happening. So I shouldn't even have to sit here and explain it to you. But what do you think needs to be done about it? And when are people going to stand up and fight to have something done about it? Because this is insane that this continues to happen. And I'm going to put a little clip of blips of different videos of people getting beat up, tased, pepper sprayed, choked out, whatever, etc. And show you how many of these incidences happen. Just like in maybe a minute worth of Google searches, I found 3 major videos that you're about to see. And then that's just in that one little point in time within maybe a couple weeks or a month span that all this happened. And it's not just that area, it's in all areas. It's not just one bad egg that gets through. They're all bad eggs. It's one good egg may be there. So that one good egg is not going to stand up to the bad eggs because he's way outnumbered. This is the problem. Why isn't it the opposite way anymore? Because you know what goes downhill, and it starts at the top. And what the top allows and brings in and stirs up and makes for its own agenda is what's going to trickle down. So, again, all these government agencies have to either be reformed or be dismissed, because nothing is going to change if nobody stands up, unites together, and makes it change. Because nobody's going to walk into that White House or our Congress or our governor's or our senator's office and say, hey, I'm going to do the right thing today, and I'm going to fix all this. Because it's not part of their plan. Look what's going on today, and I'm going to do a report about that too. The craziness at the White House through all this presidency stuff. Just look at some of the reports on how people are getting away with things they weren't allowed to get away with under Trump a couple months ago. For somebody dying, somebody being murdered. And I understand people are upset about what's going on right now, but what you're doing, other people would have been shot dead for, arrested, pepper sprayed, beat up, tased, etc. And all of them are walking around there free because they got someone in power behind them. But let's say it took a wrong turn, you people who are doing all that. Do you think President Trump's going to stand up and protect you? Come on. You're really not part of his agenda. You're a part of his plan. You're a part of his plan to stir the pot. And that's not going to save you if they decide to arrest you and charge you with massive charges like they were talking about on the news. But right now, you're a part of his plan. So you're going to be free to do what you want to. And that's why I said it doesn't matter, Democrat, Republican, blah, 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 who's who, what's what. We're all just people. We're all just people. And that's what we need to be treating each other like, all people. We are all human beings. We are all people. We all bleed the same. We have all mixed races together now. We have all kinds of religious beliefs now. What are you really fighting over? Come on. We all know there's corruption in the world, and just because it fell your way this time, you're upset? Well, I'm not going to get into that tonight. Again, this thing's upset me. It's got me ranting and raving, and I don't want to do that to you guys. I will do a video on it and follow up on that story. But as for tonight, this is what the video is about. You let me know what you think, because things have to change, people. Things have to change. And if they don't, again, it's going to be a very sad future. Just what you've seen today at the White House, that could end up getting a lot worse. Because just like Officer Anderson said, which I've said for many years now, this is starting to wake a sleeping giant. And we really don't want this to go in the wrong direction. So watch his video. Listen to his words wisely. And from his police station and his officers and his kind and his new gang, not his, but where he came from, because he's against what they're doing. Remember that. He's a good one. But anyways, from who they are, nothing is going to change. And it's sad to say that. But they are waking a sleeping giant by their behavior and what they've done and what they continue to do. And it's going to end up worse if we don't make a change soon. Because again, what happened at the White House can happen in bigger numbers. Mass numbers. And I've been saying it for a long time. I don't want to see that happen. I don't want to see it happen in a violent way. I want to see it happen in a positive and good way. And we can all do that just by standing together before it gets to a bad situation. And it could turn horrible for every single one of us and very dangerous. So I'm praying that you guys hear me and that you share this video and that you subscribe and that you join, and let's figure this out. Because if we don't, again, there's a very dark tomorrow coming. But for now, go listen to his words, see what he says about all of this. And it's sad that his station and captain that he had so much belief in had let him down and turned their backs on him for being a good officer. It's very sad. And it's wrong. It's not only wrong for him, it's wrong for all of us, because now we are left with the bad officers and a very bad situation. All right, guys. Well, go watch the video, and I will see you in my next video. God bless. Take care of one another. Hold your loved ones tight tonight, because tomorrow could be a very dark one. Have a good night, guys.
You know, as a police officer, I'm compelled to make this video. I've been in law enforcement for 10 years, And I'm speaking to my peers, other fellow officers, people in any kind of law enforcement position. I've seen officers nationwide enforcing tyrannical orders against the people. And I'm hoping it's the minority of officers, but I'm not sure anymore, because every time I turn on the television, every time I look to the internet, I'm seeing people arrested or cited for going to church, for traveling on the roadways, for going surfing, opening their businesses, going to the park with their families, or doing nails out of their own house, using their own house as a place of business, and having undercover agents go there and arrest them and charge them with what? With a crime? I don't know what crime people are committing by doing nails in their own house, but we're seeing this more and more and more, and we need to start looking at ourselves as officers and thinking, is what I'm doing right? Now, I want to remind you that regardless of where you stand on the coronavirus, we don't have the authority to do those things to people just because a mayor or a governor tells you otherwise. I don't care if it's your sergeant or your chief of police. We don't get to violate people's constitutional rights because somebody in our chain of command tells us otherwise. It's not how this country works. Those are de facto arrests. You know, we're violating people's rights and taking money from them, or even worse, arresting them and depriving them of their freedom when they are exercising their constitutional rights. So let's talk about that. Let's read something right here off of the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Among these, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their power from the consent of the governed, meaning our power and any government official's power is derived from the people. Okay? We don't hold power over our citizens. It's contradictory to everything that our country stands for. And this is what I'm seeing. First Amendment rights, telling people they can't go to church, freedom of religion. Okay? Telling people they can't protest, freedom of assembly. Fourth Amendment violations, illegal traffic stops to check for papers. What are you, the Gestapo? Is this 1930s Nazi Germany? You don't get to stop people unless you have reasonable suspicion or probable cause that they have committed a crime. And I know people that have personally been stopped saying, we want to see papers showing that you're essential.
David 2, copy a phone call.
That is not how our job works, okay? What really has been pissing me off lately is the fact that these officers that are going out here and enforcing these tyrannical orders, what they're doing is they're making my job and my safety, or they're putting my job and my safety at risk. Because what you're doing is you're widening the gap between public trust and law enforcement officers. And what that's going to do is it's going to, I mean, look at what's happened to law enforcement in the last 10 years. Less and less public trust, and more often than not, that is a result of isolated incidents that get blown out of proportion. They're not isolated anymore. They're happening every single day. And the thing that I want you guys to realize is that our power that we hold as law enforcement officers, it's nothing more than a facade. It's a badge and a gun. And people, you don't realize, if you haven't lived in anarchy, if you haven't seen combat, things can be stripped from people in a heartbeat. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that these actions are going to wake a sleeping giant, i.e. the American people, okay? They are going to be put in a position where they won't have their rights trampled anymore. And us as law enforcement officers, we'll we'll have our ability to enforce the law stripped from us in about 10 minutes. Okay? I think what is going to happen if this continues is we're going to see bloodshed in the streets. Okay? I don't want to see bloodshed in the streets on either side of this coin. I don't want to see fellow officers get injured or killed, and I certainly don't want to see citizens get injured or killed. And I promise you, most of you out there doing these tyrannical acts against our citizens, you're not ready for combat. You're not mentally or physically ready for combat in the first place. I promise you, you don't want to go through that, and I hope I never have to go through that again. You don't get to just say, well, I'm doing this because I was told to do so, or I'm following orders, or I need to keep this job. Guess what? I need to keep this job more than anybody. I have 3 young children. I have 2 houses. Like, I have the same sob story that the rest of you guys have. But my personal choices and my living arrangements, no matter what they are, don't allow me to trample on people's rights. And I don't understand why that concept is so hard for people to understand. Listen, you need to stand up for what's right. You need to, if you're part of a department or an agency that is asking people or asking their officers or their deputies to impose on people's rights and infringe on their freedoms, you need to step up and say, no, that's not me. That's not what I signed up for, and that's going against my oath. And if that costs you your job, so be it. At least you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror at night. I've already expressed this to my department. And luckily for me, I come from a department that I feel like my chain of command shares my view, but I don't care what department you're part of or what your chain of command thinks. You don't get to trample on people's liberty. And so, as a special operations veteran, I've fought on the streets of Iraq under the U.S. government's guise of freedom. And I'm telling you what, the American people are going to you are going to wake a sleeping giant, and they are going to fight 10 times harder for their freedom on their soil than anything you've ever seen before. And if that's something you're willing to face, then keep trampling on people's rights. But I promise you, the American spirit of defiance is going to rise again, and it's going to be a big problem for our country. So I'll leave you with this, something that I learned as an E-nothing in the Army. No matter what situation you're put in, if you look inside yourself and ask yourself one question, am I doing the right thing? You ask yourself that, you know the answer. And no amount of money or no order or law or anything should be able to make you go against doing the right thing. So I'm imploring officers to look inside themselves and ask themselves, is this what I want to be doing to my citizens? And I think the answer is clear. And if we all stand up together, guess what? It'll be a non-issue, no factor, because people and law enforcement will be united like we should be.
The video, posted May 5th, was recorded inside Port of Seattle police officer Greg Anderson's patrol car.
I'm seeing people arrested or cited for going to church, for traveling on the roadways, for going surfing, opening their businesses.
In it, Anderson sharply criticizes officers enforcing stay-at-home orders and urges law enforcement to take a stand.
If you're part of a department or an agency that is asking people or asking their officers or their deputies to impose on people's rights and infringe on their freedoms, you need to step up and say no. And if that costs you your job, so be it. I've already expressed this to my department. And luckily for me, I come from a department that I feel like my chain of command shares my view.
The video quickly garnered thousands of views, but fast forward 1 week, and Anderson is telling a very different story about his department.
I got a call and it said, listen, the video needs to be taken down right now, and you need to accept a letter of reprimand.
Anderson says he refused to take the video down, even after getting a call from Port of Seattle Police Chief Rod Covey.
Greg, if you openly defy your governor, you can't be a police officer in the state of Washington. Now I am on a administrative leave status pending termination.
On the Port of Seattle's Facebook page, Chief Covey posted a statement confirming that Anderson is on paid leave, quote, while we look into allegations that he violated our policy on the use of social media. The chief continued, Greg has always had the ability to express his opinions on what is going on in the country. However, he's not allowed to do so while on duty, wearing our uniform, wearing our badge, and while driving our patrol car. Every police officer in the country understands that.
It's an insubordination charge, and it will result in me ultimately being let go from the agency.
On social media, Anderson's videos have garnered comparisons to Facebook posts by Snohomish County Sheriff Adam Fortney, now facing recall after announcing his department would publicly defy the order. We reached out to Officer Anderson for a comment. He did not return our calls. A GoFundMe account for Anderson has raised more than $20,000 in one day. Anderson says he has no regrets.
My head is held high. I'm not intimidated or upset.
Spencer Nice is seen during his Saturday arrest. Tonight, he is demanding justice after an Anderson police officer is caught on camera using a chokehold to pull him to the ground.
What the hey, man, that's my son.
The arresting officers have been identified as Officer Brandon Reynolds and Officer Ashley Gravely, both now on paid administrative leave. A joint statement from the city of Anderson and the chief of police says Officer Reynolds responded to the sound of what he believed were gunshots. While in the area, Officer Reynolds spotted 4 people walking, including Spencer Nice, who the city says was throwing something against the side of a warehouse. Officer Gravely arrives as backup just before the video captures a portion of the encounter where Nice is accused of resisting.
Yeah, take my phone. What the hey, man, that's my son. Quit being a man.
Give me your hands.
Quit being a
Put your hand on your back. Give me your hands.
all right. Jesus Christ, man. Family out. Take
The leaders believe officers Brandon Reynolds and Ashley Gravely went too far in this cell phone video. While putting handcuffs on Spencer Nice, you can see Officer Reynolds suddenly use a chokehold to take him to the ground. Officer Gravely never lets go of his arm and wrist. Spencer's mother sent 13 News these 2 photos, saying they show her son's injuries. I asked Spencer how he and his family ended up crossing paths with the officers in the first place.
Went on a family walk, go down to the water, and the cops just came up and said that there was a loud noise.
It turns out Spencer and his family had nothing to do with the gunfire the 2 officers were investigating at the time.
Obligation, I think, to participate as members in our community and speak up and say, okay, this is not quite right.
An officer facing 4 excessive force complaints at 3 different departments. Now a victim is looking to hold that upstate department responsible. Anderson police are being sued by a man who says an officer violently arrested him, causing thousands of dollars in medical bills.
But should the department maybe have seen the red flags on this officer before they hired him? Let's go to Brianna Smith, who investigates those claims.
Yeah, Gordon, Colin Martin has been disciplined and investigated by the state law enforcement agency for violent arrests in the past. Now the lawyer for Martin's latest alleged victim says enough is enough. In October of 2015, the streets of downtown Anderson were filled for a wedding. But just hours later, one of the groomsmen was arrested.
He's being escorted along, everything's fine. He goes into a shadow, then they hear a whole bunch of commotion, and Mr. Franks comes out bloody, injuries to his face.
Thousands of medical bills later, Brian Frank's charges were dropped, and a lawsuit was filed for Anderson police officer Colin Martin's actions.
But every indication we have right now is that excessive force was used unnecessarily, and Mr. Franks was significantly injured by it.
But this isn't the first time that Martin has been investigated for excessive force. This resignation letter from the Anderson County Sheriff's Office outlines the problems that Martin faced while at the Sheriff's Office, being suspended twice in a matter of 6 months for excessive force, including an incident where Martin forced a woman's head onto a car so hard it dented the hood. After resigning, Martin then went to work for Iowa Police Department, where he was investigated by SLED in 2012 for excessive force, after a teen says that he was left bloody, according to the Independent Mail. Martin was cleared in that case and then resigned. Colin Martin applied for a job with the Anderson Police Department in 2013, and through this records request, we learned that they never reached out to the Sheriff's Office to find out if he had any excessive force complaints in his background.
That does not appear to have been done. And if it was done and there was willful ignorance or willful decision made to ignore that history, then that's even more concerning.
And now, after a fourth excessive force complaint, lawyer Ryan Langley hopes that Martin will now be held accountable.
I think there's something else he needs to be doing, engaging with the public in a position of extraordinary authority does not comport with the kind of behavior we seem to be seeing.
So we checked through that records request, and Colin Martin is still working at the Anderson Police Department. And I also got his personnel file today. None of those excessive force complaints, including the one that we just mentioned in this lawsuit, were detailed in his personnel file.
We have teamed up on investigations into, you know what they're called?
Gypsy cops.
Gypsy cops, officers who sort of go from department to department to department. It sounds like that's a little bit of what's happening here.
And that's what I brought to Ryan today. I said, what is going to be the solution here for these departments who are hiring these officers who are going from department to department to skirt these issues that they're dealing with? And he said it's going to probably take something in the legislature to say they have to do harder background checks before hiring somebody, going through every department they've ever worked at, not just the last one.
All right.